Rhonda. Welcome to Mental Moments, where small changes have lasting ripples. Typically in Mental Moments, I do tips. Today is not going to be necessarily a tip, but there's going to be a discussion on ADHD and the total misdiagnosis of it. Wow. Nearly 20 years ago, when I started as a therapist, I would see a few, kids that would present and parents are like ADHD. That has exploded. I get these when I'm doing assessments on kids. A lot of times I'll get these checklists from the schools or from their physician. And in this checklist, it's, all these inattentive and, inattention or hyperactivity. And they're like, yep, they met the criteria, therefore they're ADHD. Love it. A simple checklist. That would be great yeah. ADD and ADHD. What does that stand for? Attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There are two types under the same umbrella. And so different criteria for each, and those criteria are identified in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. It would be great if ADD and ADHD just looked like this. Follow the checklist. Yep, that's it. Perfect. Problem is, ADHD and ADD symptoms are prevalent in, 7 different mental health disorders, a couple of health disorders, and have some environmental impacts that can influence it. And first, let's say, what if ADHD was not pathological? It's not a neurological. Now, I will agree that there are some people of the extremes, and I'm not talking about the extremes. I'm talking about, a lot of the people that are presenting now and coming in and sitting still during an assessment and saying, yeah, I have ADHD. I'm like, yeah, no, probably not. But okay. Yeah. So I'm talking about the general person. Okay, so imagine for a moment, let's go back to our old ancestors of the cave people. And let's say that this group of cave teens in Africa are hanging out on the beach. And cave teen Wanda says, if you look out over this ocean, over there's some stuff, and I swear those look like mountains. So to me, it suggests there's something over there that looks like something we're on right now. And I'd like to go find out. Now, most of the other cave teens would be like, oh, no, because, play it safe so we can live to the next, so we can live, because our goal is to survive in order to pass our genes on to the next generation. That's the, and that's what evolution's all about. But Wanda's over there going, I wonder what's over there. Now, what if Teen Fred goes, I bet that boat we use on the lake, I bet we could fix it, cross that ocean. And what if they do? And then they cross the ocean, and then humans spread across the globe. And so we very likely have the fearless nature of somebody, what we would diagnose with ADHD today. That's just a fearless nature of an adaptation that was successful. I'm sure there were quite a few that weren't successful, because as children, they wandered off and got eaten by saber-toothed tigers. But there was enough that were successful that, for one, helped the humans cross the globe and get around the world, and definitely it contributed to the humans race, modern human success. Because the problem is now, you put cave teen Wanda and Fred in a classroom, and they're over there going, because it's sit still, behave, read, and do this. Now, Wanda and Fred might have done really well in flint making or making arrows, because it's hands-on. So they might have done very well in a more hands-on environment, but in the modern environment, not so much, because our modern world is about sit still, read, and follow along. Even though we got bells and whistles everywhere with cell phones and games and all of this. So we're all kind of getting a tendency towards this ADHD. But anyway, that's another story. So sticking back to the ADHD. Okay, I often see ADHD totally misdiagnosed. These kids would come in with this checklist from the school that says, here's their symptoms. And it's just the criteria is copied from the DSM, and it has all those in there. Now, my job was to discern is this truly ADHD? Because I don't want to give kids, I wasn't giving the meds, but the psychiatrist that would give the meds, I make sure this is a diagnosed appropriate child, so that this child was diagnosed appropriately, so they get the right treatment. Important, you go to your doctor and the doctor's like, oh yeah, you got all the checklists, so it's obviously COVID here. It's a virus, go home, and the person dies a week later from strep. Thank goodness in the medical world, we've got testing. We don't have that in the mental health world. We have checklists. Okay, so there are quite a few conditions in mental health world that have either and both hyperactivity and an inattention as part of it. Number one, autism. Go figure, these kids are highly stimulated and they're sensitive to stimulation. So, you're going to see this hyperactivity. That kind of goes together with like salt and pepper. Anxiety. Your very anxious child is going to be like, and they're certainly going to be inattentive. You can always tell with anxiety kids because they'll be having a lot of fears of going to school or fears of leaving a parent, or, talking about, parents will say, oh yes, this is my little worry wart. That kind of thing. They're scared to death of what could happen to a parent or what would happen if this, or definitely little warriors. And so they're worrying about worrying. So guess what? They don't have a lot of energy left for, learning the ABCs and how to multiply fractions. Okay, trauma. Kids who are exposed to a lot of childhood trauma may be very, very hyper, very hyper. It's more like exaggerated play. Like they're just more aggressive in the way they play. You get a little attention. They're like, they just, it's very well aggressive. And so looking at their histories and seeing, is there a lot of trauma in their history? And then how do they engage with others and their peers? Okay. Mood disorders such as depression. Now, it's not typically ADHD that you'll see, the hyperactive part, but inattentive. They're just not paying attention. They're just like, they're just not into it. And so I want to look at the difference between inattention and where that attention is coming from. Are they just kind of rather down? What's kind of going on with that? Very rare, but it does happen with bipolar disorder. In children, it often manifests more as ADHD, and it may swing. Woo-hoo. So 1 minute it's very hyperactive. Yeah. And then other times they're, lethargic. But with kids, it really manifests as hyperactivity. It's hard to know that that's not going to be known, because we don't have, tests. We don't have any way of, testing the blood. So no way to know if they're going to present, if what's going on now as a child will present as bipolar disorder. It's not until they're teens typically, or young adults, before they're able to make that determination. Autism, anxiety, trauma, mood disorders such as depression, mood disorders such as bipolar, and ADHD. So 1 of 6 potentials in the mental health world. And so, yeah, we can actually see kids that are just very hyperactive. So if we can discount all the rest of this stuff and look at it and say, no, it's not any of this stuff as far as we know, yes. Sometimes too is they get medication and it doesn't really work very well. Sometimes that can be an indicator that they're misdiagnosed for sure. Okay, so health concerns. There are a couple that I know of, and these are just what I know of. I'm not a medical doctor. Don't even play one on TV. So there are 2 that I know of. Okay, I see this quite a bit, and there's a book written, and I can't think of it. It was How to Raise Your Difficult Raised Child, and I can't remember the author's name. But anyway, he talked about the overgrowth of candida. Candida is a yeast in our body. Now, if kids are given a lot of antibiotics for ear infections, respiratory infections, these sorts of things, the bacteria, the antibiotic kills bacteria. It not only kills the bacteria that's causing the infections, but it also kills off good bacteria. Now, this good bacteria in our gut is keeping yeast numbers of candida down. So an overgrowth of candida can result in a couple of behavioral issues, fogginess of the brain. So you kind of get that, you know, um, a lot of sometimes hyperactivity and like sugar cravings and stuff like that. It can also be a cause of the same thing in adults. Adult symptoms tend to be more the fogginess of the brain and concentration issues. But in kids, it's certainly going to have the inattention piece, potentially the hyperactivity piece, potentially behavioral issues, and definitely craving of sugar. Second one, extreme allergies. A kid who has a lot of allergies, and it feels like I had one kid tell me one time, it feels like my skin is crawling. And so, yeah, of course he's going to be wiggling. Why wouldn't he? Oh my goodness. Environmental factors. Poor nutrition is where they're getting a lot of processed foods and their body's getting poisoned basically, and they get leaky gut, all that fun stuff that goes with the inflammation, all that candida overgrowth. Yeah, so poor nutrition can definitely play into this. Such things that we use like food colorings. So what is it? The red dye. That's one of them. Processed sugars, all this stuff can also lead to some symptoms of inattention and hyperactivity. We can have neglectful parents in which there's nobody home minding the store, so to speak, because of their own addiction issues or whatever the case may be, and asking children in the household to do things that are beyond their developmental skills, which is going to typically create a lot of anxious kids or a lot of trauma. This kind of comes back to the trauma stuff. So that can be one. If you have a parents that are too lax or too authoritative, my law or no way, my way, the highway. Both of those conditions for some children can result in a lot of anxiety, and so inattention, hyperactivity, etc. And they can be just very uptight kiddos, neurotic little up. Not every child is going to manifest this way, but it's a potential possibility. Okay, another thing, and this is more adults or teen or adults, and that's substance use. Certain drugs will affect the brain. And like meth, for example, oh my goodness, they've done enough scans of the brain to show where, inattention. A lot of people say, I use meth to focus, and then the scans don't prove that. The scans prove something completely different. So drug use can often show up with ADHD, ADD symptomology. That's kind of key is after 30 days of sobriety, do we still see that? Kind of look at. Or maybe family history. Are we looking at, and with adults, all the stuff in kids are still as relevant as adults. Is this a mood disorder, depression, anxiety, trauma? Do they still have improper uh, nutrition? Are they raised with these parents and therefore these patterns were set into place? So many of the adults that are getting diagnosed are also being misdiagnosed as well as the kids. So works in both worlds. So I'm not saying that anyone that has a diagnosis of ADHD or ADD is misdiagnosed. But what I am saying is there's a lot of things out there that also have these symptoms as part of them. So that means the likelihood of being misdiagnosed is pretty good. So, and if someone is misdiagnosed and the other underlying reasons are not addressed, treatment is going to can go from failure to just not quite getting there. So what prompted me today to talk about this is just the prevalence of how many adults are coming in and saying, no, Rhonda, I have ADHD or ADD. And this is a neurological condition that I can do nothing about. And I'm thinking, oh, wait. Let's just hold on, maybe. But maybe it's something else that we can address, fix, and you'll see the symptoms go away on their own. And what in some cases where we're just talking mildness here is where we have a society that's now very stimulating and very sedentary all at the same time. So there's can be a mismatch there as well. Hopefully this was helpful, and I want to thank you. And if you like this video, please subscribe and like, and look at other videos and tips in mental moments. Thank you.